Welcome everyone to a virtual Excel camp. This week is junior high school and it is Mission Impossible. We are so glad to have you with us today. Again, we're welcoming you to the virtual Excel camp for junior high school from APH. This week is Mission Impossible. Feel free to drop in the chat who you are and where you're from. We're so excited to have you join us today. Welcome, welcome. Mission Impossible Junior High Virtual Excel Camp. Welcome, Virginia. Glad to have you with us. Our instructors today, the first is Heather, I'm going to butcher it again. Pichette-Spencer. She's a teacher of the visually impaired. She is also an orientation and mobility specialist. She has been enthusiastically serving students with visual impairments for over 20 years. Heather's mission lies in supporting students of all ages and abilities in discovering their unique talents and gifts to actively engage and share with the world. Heather is also a Baptiste certified yoga instructor, Reiki master? Reiki, see, I'm going to work on it. And mother of two beautiful souls. Say hi, Miss Jennifer, or Miss Heather. See, I'm going to.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to camp. So excited to have you here.
And another instructor is Jennifer Stelmach. She also is a teacher of students with visual impairments and has for 7 years. She is the founder and director of Camp Abilities Florida. She also works as a parent advisor for the Florida School for the Deaf and Blind. In her free time, she enjoys spending time with her 3-year-old son, Grayson, anywhere outside, often at the beach or pool. Say hi, Miss Jennifer.
Hi, everybody. Welcome.
And we have a student intern with us this week. It is Susan Drake. She is a student intern from Missouri State University. She's been a special education teacher for 7 years and is completing her certification. She lives on a farm with her veterinarian husband, Randy, son, Renan, and a herd of corgis, which are dogs if you don't know that, and cows. Say hi, Susan.
Hey guys, I'm so glad to have you here this week.
So again, thank you for joining us for camp. If you received the email and read it, there was an activity you could participate in and send us a picture. Somebody was really quick and on the ball, and we have a beautiful piece of art that was submitted to us. It is drawn on lined paper. There's a big round gray circle in the center of the paper. Radiating out from that center in a spiral shape are a variety of colored lines. Looks like colored pencil was used, or possibly crayon, I'm not quite sure. Thank you for your beautiful piece of art. But I do see one thing missing on your piece of art. You haven't signed it yet. So don't forget to sign your art. I am going to stop sharing now and I'm going to turn it over to your instructors. Have fun at camp.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome again. This is our junior high week for Camp Excel Virtual Camp. So we're going to start today. We're going to have a panel with 3 wonderful ladies who are living with visual impairments themselves. Emily Michael is a professor at UNF, and she is a poet as well. She also has a fabulous TED Talk out there if you want to look her up. And she's just a wonderful soul that I've just had the opportunity to meet recently. And she in Jacksonville, Florida, and works at University of North Florida as a professor, as I mentioned. Our second panelist is Paige Hammock. She is a junior at University of North Florida. And she had the campus experience, living on campus. Her major is healthcare administration. She's living the dream life of college, boyfriend, everything. So wonderful, Paige. And the third, we have Gabby Altamirano, I'll get it. Gabby was my student back in the day in California, and her last name was Mercado, so that's what I call her all the time. Gabby has just finished 2 associate degrees from Harbor College, Los Angeles. She has 3 children, and she's married. And Gabby has some exciting news. She has just gotten a lensectomy, so she was born with congenital cataracts, and she's just gotten the new lens in the last couple weeks, maybe month, yeah. And so this is a wonderful new start for her, and she's able to drive now, and we're so excited. So those are our panelists. Before we get started with our panelists, we're gonna have a round table talking about what their secret sauce is, how they work their lives living with a visual impairment, and how they thrive in their lives, because I know that that's so important to all of us, to not just live, but to actually thrive. And these 3 ladies are definitely doing that. So to get us started, we're gonna ground down. So go ahead and get into a comfortable seat. Take a deep breath in through your nose. Elongate your spine. Bring the top of your head up towards the ceiling. Just imagine yourself growing taller. And exhale, let your breath go out. Just relaxing here. Take another one. Inhale and exhale. Just feeling your feet on the floor, or even if they're dangling because you're not reaching the floor with them like I am, you can pretend that you're growing roots straight through your feet into the floor, all the way down into the earth to feel that grounding sensation. So what I'd like to do today with these wonderful ladies that have shown up fully in their power and in their light, is to ask them, ladies, how do you do it? How do you get through the days? How do you get through the dark days, the great days? What's your secret sauce? So we can start. Who would like to start? Paige, Emily, or Gabby? If you start talking, it'll go to you.
Hi, my name is Gabby. First of all, welcome. Welcome all who's attending. It's an honor to be here. What do I do on my darkest days? You know what? I have 3 little ones. So about 3 years ago, when I decided to go to Harbor College, I did it literally sitting on the floor thinking, is this going to be my life? Like working paycheck to paycheck, trying to pay my rent. What am I gonna show my children? So that's kind of what gets me through those dark moments, is just looking at them. I have a 12-year-old who is in 7th grade. And my first year of college, he said, Mom, I'm gonna be your competition. And I said, why? And he said, because I'm gonna go to the University of California, that's USC, and I am going to the Cal State, which is CSU. They're kind of like big rivals here in California. And I was like, oh, really? So it kind of like motivated me. And I was like, wow, you know, if I can put that spirit in him to want to go to college right now, I can't give up. And it was hard. Like I had dark days, no sleep, studying, and then, you know, maybe failing. And I just have them in my mind. It's just, you can't succeed if you don't fail. So that's kind of my motto.
I love it, Gabby. Thank you for sharing. Emily, do you want to go next?
Sure.
Okay.
Hi. I'm Emily. I'm excited to be here as well. Gabby, I love that you talked about the importance of failure, because one thing that I notice as a teacher is that many of my students are afraid to be wrong. And if you're not going to be wrong, then you're not going to learn. And the world can be very unforgiving of us when we make mistakes, whether as a blind person or as just as a non-disabled person. It can be embarrassing to make a mistake. And so sometimes you be more forgiving with yourself than the world will be with you. Whether it's that you misread the sign on a building and you're in the wrong classroom, which I have done, or you make a mistake in college or in school, you have to be willing to say, I did this, I own it, I've learned from it, I'm not going to do the same thing again. In terms of what gets me through the day, I think it's been very important for me to find people who support me. I have many friends who are much older who saw my writing long before I saw it. And they said, she's going to be somebody. I know I'm not somebody at all, but those who believed in me, Thank you, Heather. That was sweet. They believed in me, and they wanted to encourage me. As I moved into a profession, I found that it's important to connect with people in your discipline, but it's also important to connect with people with the same or similar disability, because they're tackling the same challenges that you're tackling. So they've worked it out. Why invent everything yourself? Don't be afraid to find people to learn from. I think that's an incredibly useful thing to maintain your sanity as you go through all of life's trials and challenges.
Yes, I totally agree. I'm looking at some new paths in my life too, and that's the big thing. It's like, find a mentor, somebody that you can talk to about these plans, what you want to do, how they got through it. And it's the same thing when you have a visual impairment. Find people that understand you, find your tribe, and then vibe with your tribe. That's definitely it. Yes, thank you. Paige, do you want to go?
Sure. Hi, I'm Paige. Like Heather said earlier, I'm a junior at University of North Florida, and I started out as a biology major, which for probably 5 or 6 years before that, I thought was my true calling. But once I got there, I realized that it was too much struggle for what it was worth, and I was wasting a lot of money not passing classes. So I took a really big leap and switched my major. And last semester, when I made the dean's list, which was the first time that I'd ever done that, really motivated me for these next few semesters and the end of my undergraduate. So that's been really helpful, motivating me that way. My family's also really supportive, most of them at least. So I have a lot of push from my family and my boyfriend and my really close friends. My best friend's also visually impaired, and she took a completely different path in life, but you know, we both are always motivating each other and pushing each other, and her visual impairment's much different than mine, but she's always been my backbone and I've always been hers. So it's been nice to have her with me.
Awesome. So students that are out there, you know, find your tribe. Things like this camp will help you do that. You know, reach out to people. It's okay to put yourself out there, I promise. I know that middle school is that time. I have a middle schooler of my own. My own son is 13, and Gabby has one too. And so even if we don't remember so clearly, we understand that you feel like everybody is watching you all of the time and scrutinizing you, and every mistake that you make is, you know, is just on blast for everybody to know about. But that's really not the way it is. Most people are so up in their own heads, they don't even pay attention too much to what's going on. So, you know what, just keep moving through, focusing. You know, it's always good to focus on your breath if you get really stressed out, and just help you relax. And you know what, honestly, you can't get it wrong, because we're never finished. We're not finished until we die. So we're going to keep going through this life one way or another, and you can go through and struggle and be miserable, or you can just thrive like these ladies are doing in their lives, you know. Do you guys, ladies, do you remember something from around the middle school age? Just something
Oh my God.
that you could share? Go, Gabby. Thank you. Gabby knows, and please don't bring up my math instruction.
Oh God. Don't have her for math. No.
Yeah, Paige knows too.
You know, my advice to you middle schoolers is, don't let anyone trample on your dreams. Don't let them do that. I remember I made Dean's List 6th grade, first part of 7th grade, and then, you know, the friends, and then a little support from the family kind of swayed me off of what I was doing. And from those Dean's Lists to like almost not making graduation, 8th grade graduation, I can just tell you, don't give up on your dreams. If you tell someone, hey, I want to be a lawyer, and you're blind, you're completely blind, and they say, you're crazy, how are you going to be a lawyer? I have a best friend who he is borderline blind, and he is one of the most prominent lawyers in Chicago. So I can tell you from experience, if we listen to those negative thoughts are going to empower our lives. So just keep thinking positive, guys. Don't give up. Trust me, it's the hardest time, but you'll get through it.
You will. And again, you vibe your tribe. So pick your tribe on how you want to feel every day. when you go to school, the people that you want to interact with versus the default, right? I mean, sometimes you have to reach out, and there are teachers that will support you and help you find the right group of kids to interact with. I've done that for a lot of my students. Hey, who are the kids that this kid would potentially be friends with? And not in a weird way, but just in a, you know, a covert kind of teacher way. Teachers have a way of doing that. Like, oh yeah, this kid would be a good buddy. They're helpful and they're pretty cool, you know, that kind of thing. So
Heather, we're getting some questions from our audience here. Dane asked, so what were your dreams in middle school?
Paige.
So trying to think, my mind changed so many times, as it does at that age. I think in the beginning of middle school, like 6th and 7th grade, I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I kind of tossed around the idea of being a teacher. My grandma was an art teacher, and not that I wanted to teach art, but that kind of showed me that side. And then towards 8th grade-ish, I was really wanting to go into psychology. And then as I got into high school and took some more advanced classes, then it kind of switched into what it was. But that's kind of where I started.
Awesome. Emily, what about you? Do you remember what you
That's like, I'm so old. Oh my gosh. Yes.
I know. I have no idea who I was in middle school. I just remember feeling like the whole world was staring at me all the time and being constantly embarrassed. But
yeah. So I liked musical theater, and I did a lot of musical theater in middle school. And I learned that it's way more fun to be the outlandish, crazy cameo character than it is to be the blonde, skinny princess. Not skinny. So I had way more fun being exaggerated and, you know, being the person that people are not supposed to look at, but then they start looking at that person because that person's having a lot more fun. So that, and I also knew I wanted to be a writer, and I wrote a lot of very bad song lyrics and some terrible novels, which are still hidden on my computer. But yes, I knew I wanted to write and I wanted to sing, and I have sort of traded off doing both of those things. Oh, and I used to criticize teachers I didn't like because I was like, well, I could do that better. And so I kind of thought, well, I want to be a teacher. So I had those three ideas kind of rolling around in my little middle school brain.
And so you fulfilled all of those things. You write poetry. Do you do some community theater?
I don't really do community theater, but I sing in a barbershop quartet for anyone.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
So I used to sing in a quartet. I did a lot of church singing. I did a lot of choral singing. So it kind of just depends on which ensemble I'm part of at the moment, but I do sing a lot. I think I'd like to move into giving private voice lessons at some point. So I think that'd be really fun.
That would be, yeah. I'm tone deaf. I would love some private voice lessons. I'm the teacher that goes to sing to the preschoolers and they all like scatter or cry, right? Wonderful.
Another question that had come up was, can you guys think of a time when you were told that something was impossible, but you were able to overcome it and succeed?
I can, absolutely.
Emily, go. Thank you.
Yeah, so when I started doing theater, I had a lot of people who didn't know how I would learn the choreography. And then I had people who agonized over whether I would fall off the stage. I did learn the choreography and I did not fall off the stage. So something that's so frustrating about living with a disability is that everybody gets to see you and guess what you're able to do. And they're almost always wrong. So what you have to figure out is who's going to help me learn to do the thing that I want to do, and is this a realistic goal for me? So I'm fascinated by the brain, but I'm not trying to be a brain surgeon. I think Paige had said her biology major was just too hard, and there are things that are just too hard, and it's totally okay to say this is just too hard. But I can certainly learn a dance routine and be part of a theater production. That's possible for me. I can learn that. It might take longer. It might take a lot more one-on-one instruction, but it's something I can learn to do. So there are going to be a lot of naysayers and people who say, I don't think that's a realistic goal for you. And you have to decide who's really telling you the truth. And that doesn't mean that the truth is always easy to hear, but make sure that the people who are telling you no have also sat there and thought through the problem with you.
I love that.
I have one too.
Go, Paige. Thank you.
Well, this was actually happened in middle school. This is one of that sticks out to me as like one of my biggest accomplishments, although it has nothing to do with what I'm doing now. I went to La Villa, which is a performing arts middle school in Jacksonville, and I was in the piano program. And in 8th grade, at the end of the year, all of the 8th graders would perform some kind of piece as like our last recital kind of thing. And towards the beginning of the year, we were all trying to figure out what we were going to do. And I picked a really, really hard piece because in the room that we would practice in during class, we all had like, you know, the keyboards that had programmed songs on them. So when I was bored and didn't want to practice anymore, I would just go through and listen to the pre-programmed songs. And one of the very, very last songs on there was probably one of the hardest ones in there. And I was like, I'm going to learn that. So I went up to my teacher and I was like, can you give me the sheet music for this piece? Because she had the books that come with the keyboards. And she was like, I don't think that you could play that. I was like, well, just give it to me and let me try. And I took it to my private teacher, and he was kind of like, I think it's a little over your level, but I mean, you can try it. And I ended up learning the whole piece. I played it at the recital, and apparently my parents were sitting right behind the principal. And after I had finished, the principal looked at, I don't know who she was sitting next to, but she looked at whoever she was sitting next to and was like, who is that? And my parents were sitting behind her. So they told me that later. But I played the piece like perfectly. I didn't mess up at all. And I proved my teacher wrong, and she was stunned after the fact. So.
Awesome. Yeah, I love it. So, I mean, just let's keep doing that. Let's keep showing people what can be done. We have to keep proving people wrong. The alternative is to be, you know, learned helpless and stuck in a little shell. And that's not a way to thrive throughout your life. And the younger that you can start showing people what you're all about, the better it will be for you. I have another student that I had about almost 20 years ago. So she's about 30. And she just recently Facebook messaged me about how she's really trying to come out into her own now. And she's in her 30s. So I'd like to share that with you guys, because especially families, you know, these kids can thrive and succeed, but they need your support. They need to know that you have their back and that they can do it. So this is what she said to me. She said, well, I finally had a really hard conversation with my family that I've been wanting to have for years. And I finally had the strength to do it. I was about letting them let me be more independent, and that I can do things just because I am blind. I've had this conversation because an incident happened this week. I was on the treadmill going really fast. I accidentally let go of the handlebars. I was trying to reach for the button to turn it off. I fell and scraped my elbow, but I'm okay. I told my mom and sister what happened, and they got upset with me, and they yelled at me for not calling them for help when I needed it. To make a long story short, whenever something happens, or if I want to try to do things on my own, they always say, let me do it for you, or you can't see what you're doing, or you're not doing it right, or call me if you need help. I told them that I love them, and I know that they worry about me a lot because I can't see, but I don't always need help. It was a really hard conversation to have with them, but I'm glad I did it. So, you know, for the families out there, just know that your children can succeed, but you have to give them the space to grow, and they're going to fall. They're going to fall off the treadmill or whatever. And she's fine. She's like, I'm glad I fell and proved to my family, like, look, I can do this. I don't need you to rescue me all of the time. You know, I'll let you know when I need your help. Go ahead, Susan, you look like you want to say something.
Hey, well, you know, I think it might be a great idea if we had some of our students put their goals in the chat. Or ask some questions. If they have a question that they want to ask our panelists, they could raise their hand and they could ask that question out loud. So if you have a question for our panelists and you want to ask that out loud, raise your hand and Leanne will facilitate that. But if you have a goal that you want to share, put that in the chat for us, okay? That's two things. 2 things that we could have going on, okay? And Jennifer and I will comment on all of your goals because we think it's fantastic to hear those.
Wonderful. Yes, thank you. Gabby.
Oh, and Gabby.
You know, I honestly know the parents mean well, but I can join the boat with her experience, Heather.
Yeah.
They want to protect us so much, and it's like they see us as this little porcelain doll, and if you fall, you're gonna break. We don't break. We're very strong. We don't break. I got a car about 2 months ago, and not even thinking about it. I have been wanting to drive for about 3 years. If my parents always say, you can't drive, you can't see. I'm like, I can see. How do you know what I can see? You know? So I did it, beating all odds. And I would remember the first couple weeks when I would come home from work, my dad would just look at me like driving. And I'm like, I am 30 years old. Like, I need to come out. I need to be independent. I need to find myself. And you guys have to find yourself, whether it be wanting to learn a new song, whether it be wanting to learn how to do your nails, how to do your makeup, whatever you want to do, you guys can do it. It doesn't matter your disability. Parents, you gotta let them go. They're not gonna break. We don't break.
So
Hey,
you
you know
have
what?
a question from Jennifer. Jennifer, I've turned on your mic so you can unmute yourself. And most people can find that by there you go. We can hear you, Jennifer.
Wait, sorry, I'm
That's
Mackenzie.
okay.
I didn't, it registered as, sorry, I'm sorry. It registered, that's my mom.
That's okay. That's okay, Mackenzie. Welcome.
Oh, thank you. I was gonna ask, so, I understand that, you know, having those barriers, but like, how long, did you, like, stay at like those types of schools? Like, did anybody, you know, like go to a school for the blind or whatever to like just to like get extra training and stuff like that? Because like I know that it's harder sometimes to get through public schools, and I was just curious about that.
Great question. Okay. Susan, you gonna lead who? Or Heather?
Yeah, I think Paige, did you want to say something?
Sure. I mean, I didn't. I kind of did and I didn't at the same time. When I was in elementary school, a local school here had a vision program up until I graduated 5th grade, and then they cut the program. So from the way that our preschool was set up, it was 3 years long. So I was there from the time I was like almost 3 till I was 6 to go into kindergarten. And I was only in a room with other visually impaired and blind students, which was really helpful for me as a kid to realize that, you know, oh, I'm not the only person like dealing with this. Obviously that young, you don't really understand that much either. But then me and my friend group were all pushed into mainstream classes. So we were all with regular people, if you want to call it that. So up until I graduate high school and even now in college, I'm surrounded by not very many people that have visual impairments. I'm still best friends with one of the girls that I went to preschool with. So she's about my only person, but I personally didn't. My mom didn't want me to go to the school for the blind here. She wanted me to try and be as normal as I could get.
Great, thank you for sharing.
Mine is actually the opposite.
Gabby, okay, good. Yeah.
Yes. I went through kindergarten through 4th grade in a school visually impaired, which I was sheltered in the resource center. I was sheltered by my mobility instructors. I was really sheltered. And I wanted to, sorry, there's a like fly over here. I wanted to come out of my shell. I was a very independent kind of 11-year-old. And I decided to take that step to go to a public school where I was not in the resource room. I was mainstream for 1 year. And I didn't like it. I honestly didn't like it. But that experience, it shaped me from right now where I'm in college and like Emily said, Paige said, sorry, that there's no one really like me. So it helps me. But I was so happy to go back to the resource center in 6th grade with my tribe, as Heather says, because I miss them. And I miss that feeling of being around people that are like me. But yeah, you can try it. It's not hard. You just have to be up for the challenge and try it out.
Yes, and each school district is different. So what Gabby's referring to is a resource room inside of a school. So Los Angeles Unified School District is a huge school district. And so they were able to have vision resource rooms in schools and also in elementary school for blind and visually impaired students. But I know most districts don't have that luxury. So a lot of teachers are itinerant because y'all are really special. There's not that many of you out there. So there's not that many teachers. And so a lot of the school districts that's the way that it works for them. So that's why it's so good to interact with people online and find your tribe. Even if you don't see them at school every day, just getting to know people through these different kinds of camps and all the good virtual stuff out there.
You have one more question, Dia? So try holding down your space bar. And you had lots of other ideas going on in the chat too. There you go. We can hear you.
Okay. So speaking of success, so like what eye conditions do you guys have that like won't stop you from being who you are?
I can speak to that.
Emily, thank you.
Sure. So something that's really common among like blindness support groups is, and I talk about this in my TED Talk, which Heather mentioned, so it's not self-promotion if I mention it again. Something that's really common is that people introduce themselves with their diagnoses. So like, you know, I'm Sally and I have such and such. I don't think there's any diagnosis that's going to stop you from being who you are. So I'll tell you mine. I have LCA. I have low vision and my vision is very erratic. So I call myself a blind person or a blind poet. And that's because people, if you tell them you have vision, they start trying to relate to you visually. So if I say, hey, I'm legally blind, nobody knows what that means. Okay, if you say that in the real world, nobody really understands what legally blind means.
TV eyes.
Right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Emily, could you explain what LCA is?
Yeah, absolutely, if I can remember what it is. It's similar to retinitis pigmentosa, but what you lose in childhood visually is generally what you're going to lose for the rest of your life. And I apologize if that's inaccurate. I'm not a doctor. But generally, LCA affects children first, whereas RP might affect someone in their teens. You know, it might affect someone later in life. Something that's really common with LCA is light sensitivity, and that's definitely my situation. I wear my dark glasses everywhere I go. Sort of patchy vision or vision with big blind spots in it. I'm lucky that mine are on the side. My peripheral vision is absolutely terrible. It's like non-existent. So the point is my vision is so dependent on the lighting, my level of hydration, my level of fatigue, that it's not always dependable. So if I tell someone I have low vision and they try to hand me something, they're not going to say, hey, I'm handing you something. But if I say I'm blind, they go, oh, here's the paper you asked for. I'm handing it to you. So they make my life a lot easier. You will find that your diagnosis doesn't mean anything to people who are not in the blind community. So if you say, I have RP, I have, whatever, macular degeneration, a lot of people have heard of macular degeneration because old people get it, right? But it doesn't mean anything to people who are not in your community, and it's not enough to just say, well, I have this. No one will know why that's relevant. You have to learn to talk about your needs in concrete terms. So for me, if I walk into a job interview, I say, I need large print, I need mood light, I'm a weirdo with half the lights off. So you'd have to be able to talk about your needs in a way that non-blind people can understand. And that's where I would say your diagnosis is kind of important. It's important, especially if it has long-term effects across your life, like if your vision is unstable or if there are certain treatments you're seeking. But other than that, it's really just for you and your eye doctor and maybe your close family. Everybody else, find a way to talk to everybody else in a way that they can understand.
Wonderful. Thank you, Emily. And if I can just plug tomorrow's, we're going to be talking all about IEP accommodations and, you know, how to explain to people exactly what you need and why you need it. And so that will be really helpful too. But yes, thank you.
I actually work, and what she said is very true. We always have to let people know in a language that they'll understand. I know it's hard. I know it's really hard to say I'm legally blind or I can't see that. It's really not because of other people, but it's because like our inner voice is saying, oh, they're gonna think less of me. But no, I have cataracts, and cataracts is like she said, sorry, I am not a doctor, but think of it as your windshield of a car is like spotty from the rain, so you can't see through it. You have to clean it. But with this condition, you can't clean it. What happens is they have to take the secondary lens out of your eyes, which is pretty much making you blind, and they have to wear really, really thick glasses. And even with those thick glasses with bifocals and everything, you still feel like you can't see. So I work, and when I was using those glasses, I would have to tell my boss, hey, you know, I work for McDonald's. So I'm like, hey, you know what? I can't see that screen. And they will be like, well, what can you see? And this is where you need to also be aware of like work laws and what people can and cannot do to you. They cannot discriminate you because you have a disability. They have to accommodate you. So don't be afraid to say, hey, I can't see that. So can you bring it closer, or can you make it larger? Or tell your teacher, hey, I can't see. I need to sit in the front. For those of our listeners that maybe are in college, and that's even more difficult in front of your own class saying, I can't see the board. But no, you have to advocate for yourself. That's how you're going to succeed. So don't be afraid. Just don't be afraid.
All right, we have another question from Raya. And if you want to hit the space bar, it will unmute you, or you can click the unmute.
Riya, R-I-Y-A. Give it one more shot and then we'll move on. There you almost did it. Hold down that space bar. Hold it down. Learning new tech skills for everybody, isn't it? Okay, I'm going to try one more time and then we're going to move on.
Rhea, hold down the space bar if you want to talk.
Okay, we'll try to practice a little later, Rhea. And I saw a hand go up from Dane. Dane, did you have a question? Go ahead, Dane.
What visual impairment, like the specific name do you have? Like,
If you're, yeah, I was going to say, go to your panelists. I think we heard Leber's congenital amaurosis, which was Emily, but I don't think Paige or Gabby have answered.
Gabby had congenital cataracts, and then so I think it's just Paige.
Okay, Paige.
So I don't have a diagnosis. I am a mystery case. And I don't like saying that because it's kind of frustrating for me. I was born with whatever I have. My parents took me to Nemours Children's Clinic when I was 6 or 8 weeks old. Obviously, you can't ask an infant what they can or can't see, so it was kind of hard for them to figure it out then. Up until I was about 4th or 5th grade, they thought I had macular hypoplasia, which basically just means that the part of your eye that deals with detail was underdeveloped, but then I randomly developed cataracts in like 9 months, which is very uncommon. So I had them both removed, one in 5th grade, one in 7th or 8th grade. And then after that, my vision has been stable, and they have no idea why the cataracts formed. And I switched to a different doctor who is a retinal specialist, and he's still not sure either. So I'm just kind of a mystery case.
So you're like a special star.
Yeah, nobody can figure it out. They've tried to run tests and nothing comes back conclusive that matches up with each other. So
You have another question from Christian. Christian, try holding down your space bar. There you go.
My question was if, like, for job interviews, how would you explain yourself to them, like, in a normal way for them to understand what's your condition? How would you do that?
I can speak to that.
Thank you, Emily. Thanks, Christian. That's a great question.
It's a wonderful question. So, first of all, there's all different kinds of visual disabilities, and some of us look like a non-disabled person and some of us don't. I always have a big black Labrador with me, a big black guide dog, and dark glasses. So when you see me, you know, it's like, hey, there's a blind person. So I got an interview for a job one time, and a friend had recommended me for it. It was a teaching job. And when I walked into the office, now they had seen my resume, which has a lot of work with other blind people on it. And when I walked into the office, my new future boss said, "Oh, your friend didn't tell me about your condition," which he's legally not allowed to say that. So, but he was really embarrassed because he was worried that he wouldn't have what I needed for the interview in case there was paperwork or something. He was really apprehensive. He was really worried about that. So a lot of times it's hard to talk about a disability unless you bring it up first, because your employer, there's certain questions that they are not allowed to ask you. So you might actually want to put it on the table. If you're someone who you have a lot of issues and you know that, you know, they can tell that you have a disability, you might want to say, as you can tell, I have an impairment. Here's how it's going to affect my job. And so for me, font size, I say, well, I'm going to need large print. And if we have a meeting, like the materials, you know, at least a few hours in advance so I can enlarge them, unless my boss wants to enlarge them. And then I talk about lighting because I have a light sensitivity. And I talk about, you know, hey, if there's a fire drill, I might need someone to come help me because my guide dog doesn't work very well in fire drills. And it's really important to talk about what you need in very concrete terms. The problem here, and we're all at a disadvantage because even though we're all very positive and uplifting about who we are and what we deal with, the majority of the world is scared of disability. So when you walk into a job interview and they find you're disabled, they're going to be a little bit nervous. And your job is to make them not nervous. Your job is to reassure them that you can do the task that you have in for. And Gabby mentioned this, like accommodations. Accommodations don't mean that I get a job that I'm qualified for. Accommodations mean that I am qualified for the job and I can perform the job with these adjustments. So your job is to be friendly and very specific, and you're with a generally pretty small adjustment.
Thank you, Emily.
You have another question from Theo. Theo?
Well, I was just saying that earlier today my QTVI was basically trying to make make me use image descriptions instead of diagrams, and they were saying that in the UK there's BBC Bite Size, and they were saying that the descriptions on there might be sufficient for physics revision, and I've been having like hard copy textbooks for physics being adapted, and I just know that's so different, and I just can't believe the QTVI did that to me, but I stood up for myself and I did it.
Good for you, Theo. That's awesome. Yay. That's exactly what you need to do. And the more you do it, you build that muscle. You build that muscle in your brain that helps you overcome the next obstacle, because we don't ever stop facing obstacles while we're living. You know, we just go to the bigger, better boss, you know, the next boss in the video game. I always think about it like, oh, okay, I just got through this and I feel so great. And like, okay, what do you got next? You know, what's coming up? And then you get better and more confident as you do it. So it's just practice. So practicing in school with your teachers is perfect. Yeah.
He added it was super tiring though. I agree.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. Yeah. And you know what, that's what naps are for.
And you have another question from Caitlin? Caitlin? Try holding the space bar down. There you go.
Okay. So my question is for Emily. Can you like apply to have a guide dog, like say like you're not blind but you have like a visually impaired, that like say you have a condition but you fall under like visually impaired, how do you know if you are able to get a guide dog?
So that's a great question, and it's going to vary from school to school. And I might be wrong, so you guys might want to chime in on this. I think it's kind of the same rules as a white cane. So if you are legally blind, you're usually eligible for a guide dog. So there are people who have used dogs that have never used a white cane. So I think it has to basically the numbers. It's a numbers game. But probably if your eye doctor could write that letter, or if you're someone who travels with a sighted guide, you're not comfortable just walking alone, a guide dog might be a good option. The other thing to remember is some schools cater to totally blind people, and they will not admit you if you have some vision. They'll actually make you wear a blindfold. There's some programs like that, independent like that. I don't agree with it. I do not agree at all. But basically, you're going to make sure, first of all, you make sure that you qualify, that you have the right vision to qualify, and that might or just based on personal circumstances. And then also reach out to the schools directly and say, hey, this is my visual situation. These are my struggles when traveling. Because a guide dog is a lot of work. It's a wonderful, wonderful thing to do, to work with a guide dog, but it is a lot of work, and you want to make sure that you really, really need one and you know what it's going to be about.
Yes, thank you. Do we have more questions? I see 2 people up there. Are they not questions?
I don't see questions. Okay.
So I wasn't sure. Oh, no, I'm sorry. They're the people.
Now you have one. Miss Gray. Grace, try holding down your space bar. The key command would be Alt-A, possibly, for your computer. There you go. We can hear you now, Grace. Go ahead and talk. Okay, Grace, you're having a hard time. Give you one more second. Okay, you have 2 others. Dia?
Now current voice up.
There you go.
All right. So I'm planning on taking language as one of my majors for college. So whenever you take something like when you take language as your major, are there any like eye conditions that you need to have like, are there any rules regarding disabilities that you need to have to follow for the, so what's the job process for a blind person to be taking language as their major?
I can speak to that, but I feel like I just talked a lot. So,
Are you meaning you want to major in communications?
No, she was saying a language, and I think I just lost her. So she'd have to raise her hand again so I can find her again.
Did you mean English?
Hold on. Let her raise her hand again so I can grab her again. There you are.
You are currently unmuted.
There you go.
Leave meeting. Command
Nope.
W.
We can hear you now. We can hear your jaws.
Wait, don't you mean voiceover? Because I'm
Voiceover. Yes. Yes. Sorry. it's a bad habit.
My Mac users.
Okay, Dia, can you answer their question? They want to know, are you talking about English, communications, or are you talking like French or Spanish?
Will occur to everyone. Do any of
I'm talking about like
voiceover.
Like learning a foreign language. Say, suppose you're traveling somewhere, say to Japan or Mexico, and you have to speak to the locals there in that specific language. Like a language interpreter.
We definitely can speak to our next sessions in our next week is actually called Around the World, Dia. It's going to be all about different countries and their accessibility features, and we're actually going to have one of our vision impaired speakers is going to be someone who's in Spain right now, and she's a communications major from FSU who graduated and went overseas. So she may have a lot of really good information on that, and that was the August sessions that we do for the junior high.
So stick around. The only other thing I can answer to that is I actually had a student who's an adult now who her major was Spanish. And so that was what she got her degree in, was Spanish. So I know it can happen. And she reads Braille. That is her medium. Dane has a question.
Okay, so you know how like whenever you're in like a pitch black area, you see flashes in your eyes. Whenever you're blind, do they see those flashes, or because like if there's no light coming to your eyes, you see flashes as your eyes trying to read stuff to your brain, and your brain is all confused. Does that happen when someone's blind?
Well, I'll see if any of these panelists can answer that. I don't know if I can.
So I've had students before that are blind, and they actually press their eyes to see those flashes of light sometimes. Sometimes a little bit of eye poking, that self-stim that teachers don't like. Sometimes I think they do that because they can see flashes of light, but it depends on if you have those connections to the brain at all to be able to see those. Does that make sense?
Very dependent on different eye conditions and different how the eyes are set up and functioning. Someone else had a question and they put their hand down.
I know in the chat there was a question if anyone had a service dog.
I do.
Someone just answered in the chat that their daughter is totally blind and she can't see any flashes.
So Emily stated she has a guide dog.
I do, and we've been working together for 6 years. He came from Southeastern Guide Dogs in Palmetto, Florida, and he is pretty much wonderful. So I can speak in more detail about that if there are more questions.
You have another question from Thomas. Thomas, what's your question?
So I was wondering, how do you make a good first impression, or like teachers, or just starting at a new school?
Okay, how do you make a good first impression, like for teachers starting at a new school? Thanks, Thomas.
In response to that, ask to sit in the front. That's gonna be your best first impression. Ask to sit in the front. If you're a Braille user, really use your sense of hearing. Let the teacher know that you're engaged. Maybe raise your hand. A lot of teachers are very, very open to communication with the Braille students because I was in the research center in a school for visually impaired. And that's what I saw a lot of my fellow classmates did, and that's what I did. Sit in the front, raise your hand. If you're a print reader, take notes, take lots and lots of notes, because sometimes it's like a job. If you're working and you're late, and then you have a problem and you try to bring it to your boss, he's really not going to be inclined to help you because your job performance isn't, good. It's like a teacher. They see you're taking notes and notes and notes, or you're engaging and you still don't get the material, they're going to be more than happy to help you. But if they see that you're not, that's where the first impression kind of goes down a little bit.
I think also this is Emily adding on to what Gabby said. I think also your personal care habits. So make sure that you're neat and clean. You don't have to be the most stylish person, that's your inclination, but you do want to be neat and clean. You want to conduct yourself with respect for your classmates and with others. And if you're a quiet person, you don't have to be the class clown. You don't have to always have but being confident in who you are. So you don't have to change who you are. You just want to present your best. So clean, like Gabby said, on time, very interested in school. Don't be afraid to ask your teacher, hey, can I chat with you for 5 minutes? I'd like to share some of my thoughts about class. Your teacher will really appreciate that because they're not a mind reader and they won't know what you need. So if you say, I'd like to, these are some things that worked well at my last school, or even a job. These are some things that worked really well on my last job. That would help anybody to understand it, you and know what you're going to need and how they can kind of help you get ahead of that.
I'm going to let this one last question be asked before we close. Christian? Quick question. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. My question was about the guide dog. Let me turn off my... Oh. I lost that. So my question was about the guide dog. Were there any paperwork that you had to fill out when you started to get your guide dog?
Yes. So when I applied for a guide dog, I had to fill out an application on the school's website. I had to provide a medical exam, just a basic checkup. They want to make sure you're in good health. And I also had to provide an eye exam from my eye doctor. And then there were, a couple of references. They wanted to hear from my O&M instructor. But it's kind of like applying for a job. So yes, there is some paperwork that you have to go through when you're applying to get a guide dog.
And I am seeing that our time has run out. So I have a question. First, I have a thank you. Thank you for all our extra guests today. This has been wonderful. And thank you to my instructors. I do have a question though. What is tomorrow?
Guys, it's Susie. Tomorrow, we are going to talk all about you. Okay. And that means what is in your IEP, what the IEP is, what it means. So what would be great is if you had a copy of it or knew how to access it and you could read right along with us, because we're going to talk all about you and how to advocate for yourself. Okay, so I'm really excited to do that with you tomorrow, and I look forward to seeing you.
Thank you all. I'm going to say goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good day.